So again, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure having you with us tonight. As you can see, Dr. Yanis and I are color coordinated, as we said the first time the first minute we started this webinar. Just a brief introduction to Dr. Yanis. He's a senior lecturer at the University of Westminster. He graduated from Essex and then from University of Kent with both his LLM and PhD. He has multiple journal and peer review articles published top peer reviewed journals and global media such as the Forbes and HuffPost. Dr. Yanis has been doing SQE, I would say, feedback and review different course providers, as well as providing his own material and help for SQE candidates, which is the solicitor qualifying exam, for some time now, ever since it came in and replaced the previous system, which we will learn about now. And Dr. Yanis teaches multiple courses at the University of Westminster. He was also the course provider, the course leader of the program I took at the University of Westminster. He also supervised my dissertation. I'm very pleased and thankful we could have Dr. Yanis with us here today. So thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you for having me. It was, yes, and accidentally we color coordinated. That you see, this is the evidence of success in good academic training. You naturally know to dress like the other person in the interview without even having to put any effort. But while you were a student, however, we did dress differently. You dressed a lot better than I did. I have to say that.
You're coordinating more often now, so that's a good thing.
Especially in the webinar environment. Yes, in the real life environment where I have to arrive at the university after having cycled, perhaps I'm a little less well dressed.
And by the way, Dr. Yanis enjoys coming to university on his bicycle and not using any other like transport or commute to arrive. So it always keeps him busy and active.
The reason being, of course, that I spend my whole day sat down in front of the computer. So I take every opportunity that I can find to get out and get some exercise. So I would like to pretend that I'm doing it for environmental reasons, but I'm just doing it for a bit of exercise.
It works both ways. Dr. Yanis, I would first, before we tell our attendees how to qualify as a solicitor, especially being a foreign lawyer, and how to approach the solicitor qualifying exam and its questions and material, I would like to get some insight on you actually assessing different course providers and how it all started when the systems were replaced before the QLTS and moving into the LPC.
Now, should we assume that our audience knows what the SQE is about, or should we explain a little bit what the qualification process is like?
I think let's explain a little bit about the qualification process.
Now, the majority of the audience here are likely to be lawyers already in Lebanon or perhaps in other jurisdictions. Now,
Correct.
one of the key questions that everybody has when they're coming to spend a bit of time and living in another country is whether they can use their home qualification to engage in legal work. Of course, this isn't something that happens very easily because in every jurisdiction, the law associations are segregated and the way that the legal qualifications operate are segregated. So the fact that you're a foreign qualified lawyer does not give you rights of audience or the right to provide legally protected services in a different jurisdiction. Unfortunately, this is the case even within the EU. Even if you were in another EU member state, you wouldn't be able to offer legal services across jurisdictions. If Lebanon is anything like Greece, you cannot even provide legal services from one town to the next because you're registered with a bar association in a specific town. And then when you go to another town, you need local counsel to help you because you don't have rights of audience in the local court.
Yeah, it is. We have two bar associations in Lebanon.
Yeah. So, Greece being a little bit bigger, there are plenty, so that it causes that problem. So if you're already a lawyer where you're from and you come, say, and spend some time in the UK, you will naturally be thinking, what can I do in order to be able to provide legal services? And one of the things that our audience will need to know about is that there's a very good reason for seeking to provide these legal services through a qualification. The reason is that you really don't get paid a lot if you're offering legal services without the qualification. Even though the job itself might be exactly the same, you are severely underpaid if you're working under your home title. Pretty much everybody that we know, because I'm a foreigner as well here, same as everybody else, same as most of our students and most of the people that we know for that matter, we all came here with a degree of legal education. Some of us were qualified already. And we realized that when we wanted to work in the legal domain, we could find jobs as paralegals or legal secretaries or various types of support roles, and they paid us nothing. So people that came, say, from even from close by, people that came from France or Germany, and they already had 4 or 5 years post-qualification experience in their home countries, they came here and they got paid a fraction of what they would pay not only the newly qualified lawyers, they paid them less than they would pay the trainees. So the people who were in the process of trying to get qualified in the UK. That's the reason that the moment everybody figures this out, they're thinking, right, I have to qualify there to be able to access the pay levels that they're offering the local population instead of always being considered the second-class citizen and offering my skills and my competencies and my knowledge, but for a much lower level of pay. And, you know, this is probably really frustrating, and both the law firms and their businesses are taking advantage of this, specifically in the UK, in taking advantage of your expertise and your background and your knowledge, but not paying you at an appropriate level. I'm not suggesting that everybody is going to be paid hundreds of thousands of pounds. If you've been looking at the press here, lately there's been a lot of discussion in the legal press about how much money law firms are willing to pay newly qualified lawyers. This is probably going to get everybody excited here if I give you any numbers, because it bears no relation to what we're having where we're from. But they're paying even trainees 60, 70, 80,000 pounds a year. They're paying newly qualified lawyers 150, 160, 180. Can you believe that? What would you do with your life if you were getting paid 180,000 pounds a year? Can you believe that? That would be, I mean, Isam here would be wearing like a suit on top of the jumper.
Exactly.
So certainly we're not talking about these levels of pay, but there is still a difference to be had between being a paralegal that is getting paid 40 or 45,000 pounds a year and being a newly qualified foreign lawyer who became a solicitor here and can hit 80 or 100 or 120. So that's the rationale behind thinking I would like to come and qualify in this jurisdiction. Now, the second part of this is, what do you actually have to do in order to qualify? So you mentioned before the previous scheme. Do you think our audience will be familiar with the scheme that predated the SQE, the QLTS program?
Maybe and maybe not, but I think it would be worth like mentioning that there was at least a previous scheme or a previous program to the current
So
exist.
up until 2020, that was at the point that they introduced this new exam in the UK. If you were a foreign qualified lawyer, you would register for what they called the Qualifier Lawyers Transfer Scheme, which contained an exam that had two components. One was knowledge of the substantive law, and the second was more lawyer skills. How do you behave in relation to clients? How do you handle money? How do you operate in a law firm? How do you deal with the courts? How do you deal with procedures and all of that stuff? Now, the very interesting thing is that candidates from overseas, because this was only available to people who are qualified overseas, they had a little bit of difficulty getting the knowledge content for the first part of the exam, that was the English substantive law, but they did okay with the second part of the exam, that was the application of the law and the skills of working as a lawyer. Because even though we're working in different systems and there are differences of style and culture between common and civil law and also between jurisdictions, the logic of being a lawyer and how you approach work in a law firm, how do you approach the client, how do you approach the court, how do you understand procedures, tends to be fairly consistent. So people did fairly well, and the success rates were not bad in these exams. It did require a great deal of prep, especially getting through the substantive law bits, but then once you go to the application bits, it got a little bit easier. Now, all of this ended in 2020 or so when they introduced what they call now the Solicitor's Qualification Examination. Now, why did they do this? Nobody knows. We've been wondering about this, even at the law schools, we've been wondering about this for years. Why? The previous system that you qualified as I'm talking about solicitors only here, because there's also the stream of barristers, but that's different and really peculiar and difficult for foreign lawyers. So we're not going to talk about barristers. We're only going to talk about solicitors because I think the bar is not relevant to our audience. If you wanted to become a solicitor before, you would either have a law degree or you would have studied something else, and then you would do what they call the graduate diploma in law, which was a one-year conversion course. After you did this, you will enroll yourself in a vocational course, something like a master's degree, but kind of focused on the practice of the law, that they call the legal practice course. So you would you would finish your law degree, or you would finish the conversion course, then do this LPC, and then you would have a period of 2-year training in a law firm, after which you would have achieved your qualification. Now, somehow, the regulator here, the Solicitors Regulation Authority, got convinced that the system needed changing. And they introduced this new bar exam. I mean, any of you who know the American style or the European style with a traditional bar exam, so they wanted to do something that approximated this. And funny for us, they took the QLTS system that was designed for the foreign lawyers and applied it to everybody. So the sort of stuff that you and me had to suffer from back in the day, now everybody has to suffer from. And the SQE, if you guys want a little bit of background on this, I mean, I'm not going to be very long, but just very briefly, again, has 2 key components. One is knowledge of the substantive law. The other one is the lawyer skills and how do you behave in the actual application and process of the law. The first part is a big multiple choice test. I know that everybody's thinking, what? I mean, you can really become a lawyer and you can be assessed through a multiple choice test? Yes, you can. We're not here to criticize what's going on. We're here to kind of tell you what's going on. So the big multiple choice test has got 2 sets. So there are 2 exams within that first level of the exam. Each set has got 180 multiple choice questions. They give them to you again in 2 bits. So you do 90 questions, then you have a bit of a break, then you do another 90 questions, then you come back a few days after and you do the same thing for the second part of this exam. Currently, right now, this week, people are sitting this exam because it's if you see some people screaming in the streets and stuff, the people who are going through SQE1 at the moment. So if you survive this extensive multiple choice test, then about a year or 2 after, you could register for the second part of the exam. Maybe you will not have to if you're already a foreign qualified lawyer, but we're going to get to that in a moment. Would you like to know what is the substantive knowledge content that you need to cover for this first part of the exam with the multiple choice questions?
I think we should know what we need to cover, like what law courses or material we need to study, and what are we going to be examined on. Because in order, after that, my next question would be, how can I choose where or what to study from?
Yeah. Now, as I said, the first part of the exam, that is the big multiple choice test, has got 2 components. The first component that we like to call functioning legal content, right? Oh, no, wrong. It's not content, it's knowledge. Functioning legal knowledge, part 1. This is business law, dispute resolution, contract, tort, and the English legal system, right? That's it. Business, dispute resolution, contract, tort, English legal system. The second part that we call FLK2 is the really boring stuff: property practice, wills and estates, solicitors' accounts, land law, equity and trusts, that everybody hates, and criminal law and practice. Within this big 2-set system of exam, you have the totality of the substantive knowledge content that one would cover if they were doing a law degree in England and Wales, with some added bits, because business law, contract tort, legal system, property, equity and trusts, land, and criminal law, we do as part of the undergraduate law degree. However, wills and estates, solicitors' accounts, and the practice elements, civil and criminal procedure, we don't do as part of the law degree. And we never did. The reason is that under the old system, as I told you, people used to do this legal practice course. So all the procedural and really boring bits were part of that legal practice course. So you effectively then, if you are a foreign lawyer that seeks to come and take the SQE in order to qualify in England, you are going to have to get your head around the entire knowledge content of what one would cover in a domestic law degree, and then on top, all the procedural stuff that one needs to know if they're making their pathway to qualification. So it is a great deal of work, unfortunately.
And is it actually that you have to know all the material within or all the content within, let's say, contract or tort, or is it just examinable material that's being covered, or is it most of it?
Unfortunately, they don't give you a syllabus that you need to cover. They give you a list of headings.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to the Solicitor Regulation Authority's website, they offer you a breakdown of the exam specification. But they won't say, here is our guidebook or a textbook, it's this, take it, study it. Here we don't have a civil code, for instance. It's not like in civil jurisdictions. If you were doing this in France, they would give you the codes. They will give you the civil procedure code, the criminal procedure code, and the civil code, and they will say, take that, go home, study it, come back for the exam. Here we don't have this. So you have to work yourself from this list of headings that they've got as an exam specification, and then try and figure out what is the content that you need within. Now, this is not something that is very difficult, because since it approximates what people teach at law school, pretty much the standard content of a class, say contract law, will be what they will examine. Will you need to know all of that stuff? You need to know everything, but at a superficial level. No.
At the level of a newly qualified solicitor is what they tell.
I know they say this, but what does this actually mean? It doesn't necessarily mean a lot, because in reality, a newly qualified person would be able to do a lot more stuff than somebody who's just passed the SQE. On the other hand, a newly qualified person would choose their area of activity, so they wouldn't need to know everything about everything. But
Exactly.
there's a reason why I'm telling you, you need to know at the superficial level. If you were studying this stuff at law school, you would have some information on the history of the law, about its evolution, why it is the way it is. You would have a little bit of critique. You would have a little bit of thinking, how could it be made better? Forget all about this. Nobody cares. For the qualification examination, you only care about what the law is now and how it applies to particular practical situations. All of these big sets of multiple choice questions that I told you about, they're problem-based questions. They give you a scenario that says, X and Y did this and that and the other thing, and then they got into this argument, and now they're asking you for advice on this. Pick one of these 5 possible options. So they're all scenario-based. Nobody asks you to quote the law. Nobody asks you to explain cases. Nobody asks you to explain statutes. It is just asking you to make selections with a very practical mindset. For us as legal educators, this is very shallow. So it's practical, but it's also not particularly deep in the level of knowledge. But you need to study everything, and you cannot avoid it, because the whole thing is examinable. And within these 2 big sets, 180 questions for one set, 180 questions for the other set. They've got so many questions available to them that they will ask you something about everything. So you cannot choose to leave out something.
So I guess you need to study everything and you need to know about everything, because you might be asked about it.
Yeah.
That's one. And as for the scenario-based or problem-based exam, you're not being asked about the law itself, rather the application of the legal concept, which you need to know the legal knowledge, and you also need to know the application of this legal knowledge in different
Yeah,
uh,
but it is
cases.
really focused on application. So a client has got this problem. What do you tell the client to do? So we don't really care about what the cases actually mean or why the law came to be the way it is or whether it's good or
We
not. So
don't
these are all
actually
the
care
stuff that
about
we do. Yeah,
we don't actually care about the legal theory, the stuff we
yeah,
study about at university.
yeah,
So here I come to the next question. If it's problem based and I need to know almost everything, I do not think that all course providers give you the same thing, or all course providers give you the same set of practice questions to prepare for your SQE.
yeah.
How do I
Uh,
choose what course
Now,
provider?
yeah. Good. It's a good question, but I need to start with one point. You are not obligated to take a course with someone. So the process does not ask you who did you study with, where is your degree coming from, or whatever. If we're talking about people who are qualified overseas, they really don't care. They only care that you have a practicing certificate from overseas. At no point in the process do you need to say, or you need authorization to be able to register for the exam. Anybody who actually, for that matter, in the UK, anybody who has a higher education qualification, you could have a creative design or like a computer science degree, and you can still register for the exam. Really, they don't care where you're coming from. So it's all on you. You don't have to get somebody to help you. You could prepare by yourself. Now, a great deal of what I do is actually helping this segment of the audience that is trying to prepare by themselves. Who would be able to prepare by themselves? Somebody who's working in the UK already. So if you've already been here for quite a while and you're working as a paralegal or as a legal secretary, or you're working in-house as a contracts manager or on some other capacity within the legal domain in the country, then you probably are familiar with some of the areas of the law you need to study. So you got a good starting point. If you have the time and you have some background of knowledge, or perhaps you did a law degree in the past in this country, you could choose to self-study. You could do this by getting books yourself, getting material, watching my YouTube channel, watching other resources that you can find available. Some of them are for free. So you could choose to do this and prepare. I mean, I know quite a lot of people who were preparing for the qualifying lawyer's exam under the previous scheme that just prepared by themselves. They ordered all the books that they needed and set 6 months aside, read everything, and then went to take the exam. If, however, you are unfamiliar, you've never taken an English law degree, you're not working in England at the moment, and this is aspirational for you, or you're working in England but in a different domain, you're like a banker, you're in a business domain, you're a sort of data protection officer or whatever, yeah? Then it's going to be very challenging to bring your knowledge level from 0 up to the level required in order to pass SQE1. Now you get to the point that you're going to need somebody to help you, which brings the question, how do you select from the available providers? Now, what sort of providers do you have? Some are campus-based, tuition-based experiences, like you doing a master's degree. And they're probably going to cost as much as you doing a master's degree, because many universities have taken their previous program, which was the legal practice course that I told you about, that was a taught qualification, and you basically enroll yourself as a student, either 1 year or 2 years part-time, and you sit down in a class and you get somebody like me coming to deliver classes to you. And that costs a great deal of money. They don't give them to me, they keep it for themselves. But it still costs a great deal of money. If you cannot do the kind of sit down on location experience, but you want something remote, now you got more choices, because there are certain programs that are offered that are supported programs. You get classes, you get a mentor, you get a tutor, you also get to sit in group classes. And these are cheaper. They're still expensive, but they're cheaper than the location-based, kind of campus-based courses. You can find some of those. If you cannot devote the time to be at the same time in a classroom, online, or on campus. And you want something that gives you complete freedom of time because your work schedule is unpredictable. So you just want to study whenever you can study, and you just need a guide through the material. There are other providers that are offering you this. There are other providers that are offering you material packs and some advice as to how to work your way through the materials packs, and lots of mock exams and practice tests and all of that stuff, without having face-to-face interaction, either online or face-to-face. These are cheaper. And this is where we have a problem, because there are so many, and I keep complaining endlessly about this. And the more I complain about it, the more upset I get. Up to a point that I published a short on my YouTube channel today where I'm just kind of raging about this particular thing, like how people are getting scammed and they have to pay stuff and they don't even know what it is that they're buying. If you just want a pack of material and resources and some pre-made tests, there's really wide availability, but very little opportunity to quality control what it is that you're getting before you paid for. How are you going to make a choice? You make the choice the same way we always make a choice. You ask your friends and you try and find somebody who has already been through it. So, you know, go listen here and ask him. Now, find friends, relatives, people that you know and you trust that are related to this experience, and ask them, where did they go? Was it useful? How was it? Would they recommend it on? If you don't have anybody that can help you that you know personally, then try and see what you can find from online reviews. The same way we do for everything. I mean, look, back home, you guys probably can talk to each other, but here we don't talk to anybody because we never see anybody face to face. So the only thing we can do is kind of look online for reviews. It's like if you're looking for a maths tutor for your kids, okay? How are you going to find one? Unless somebody gives you a recommendation, then you start kind of Googling maths tutor in that area where I live. And the only guide that you've got are the reviews that you're going to find online. So try and find as many reviews online as you can get your hands on that offer some evidence of the experience that you had with the providers. Don't take the reviews that the providers are putting by themselves. Most of them are fake, which is another thing that really pisses me off. What's with the anonymous reviews? You know, I could put on my website, 6,000 students love me because they think I'm a great teacher. And I offer kind of avatars or kind of fake pictures and kind of student 1, student 2, student 3. I made all that stuff up. How are you going to know? So there are few providers that have got the confidence and the guts to actually put eponymous reviews on their websites. So then you can find that these people are real because you can look them up on LinkedIn. To the extent that people put their names next to the review, these are a better way of looking at it. To the extent that you can find people talking about this, look for LinkedIn posts, look for kind of YouTube channels like mine that I do reviews of the providers and all of that. Try and get as much information as you can. Should you go by reputation? This might be difficult to do if you're already away, because if this is a new domain for you, how do you know reputation? Again, if you're looking for a math school for your children, right, to find a teacher for them or some additional tuition, or a school for them to learn English or French or whatever, which one is the prestigious one? If it's a completely new domain for you, you wouldn't even know. Now, universities in the UK, not many of them, some of them are offering HQE prep courses that are usually the location-based ones that are very expensive. Some of them are offering an online version that might be a little bit more price competitive. If a university, like a public institution, is offering a prep course, then it's probably okay. You know, I'm not committing to anything, it's probably okay. The private providers that are offering different options that are cheaper and are mostly online, or they're not supported and it's just material, those, the best known ones, and we can share the names in the chat for people later on. We've got Barbary, which is an American institution that offers a great deal of that here. You've got something that calls itself the University of Law, which is a private university in the UK. You've got the BPP, which is, again, a private university in the UK. You have QLTS School, which is one of the private providers that specializes in this. You've got, what else do you have? I think you've got something called the College of Legal Practice as well, that is offering a variety of these types of support events. Now, if you want, we can share with you guys later in the community area in my YouTube channel. I do reviews of the prep providers. So I put like a short post and I'm saying I came across this provider. I think they're legit. I think they're safe, or I don't think they're legit. Don't go for them. So if you want like a quick run through of all the possible providers, mainly the online ones that you can find by Googling around. If you have a look through my community posts, you're probably going to find some sort of review there, so it gives you an idea. It is a little bit hit and miss. If some of them are offering also a warranty, do they offer you your money back if you don't pass? Do they offer you like a second attempt for free if you don't pass? How are they dealing with the prospect that you might not pass the first time around? If somebody has got the confidence to say, if you don't pass, we will refund you, or if you don't pass, we'll let you do again the course for free, then that shows that they're a little bit more confident about their out. One of the key reasons why we're having so much trouble here is because the regulator does not publish an official list of providers. And also the regulator does not give us data per provider so we can assess success. If we had a league table, then that could help us figure out which ones are good and which ones aren't, but they don't.
But aren't they now requesting like data from candidates to say which provider you worked with? And I guess this is part of actually collecting data on
Yes,
what the
but
students.
they're trying to, but they haven't been successful in collecting data that is statistically significant enough to publish a league table. So this is what they wanted to do. They wanted the people who sit this exam to then report and say, I studied with these guys and I passed, I studied with these guys and I didn't pass. So then they could kind of populate that data in a table, so then they would be able to offer some advice to the public that shows, say, 60% of the people who go with Barbary pass, 50% that go with the College of Law pass, something or other. Yeah. But because the data is not robust enough, they have not been able to do it yet. Maybe next year.
Dr. Yanis, I believe you also reviewed some of the like self study material or books for different providers.
Yeah.
Is that
If you want to go down the self-study route, and look, if you are going with a prep school, you don't buy the material separately. I mean, the whole point of paying somebody is that they give you the material that you need to study, and that's why they're so expensive. It's not simply that you're getting private tuition and then they tell you go to the bookstore and buy all the books that you need. You will buy material by yourself only if you're self-studying and you don't have a tutor to support you. This has been a problematic domain because the major publishers, Cambridge University Press, Oxford University Press, Routledge, Pearson, they did have material that they were giving previously to the people taking the legal practice course, but they were not successful in updating that material and focusing it on this new exam quickly enough to have them available for people. So what we ended up with was a rather out-of-date package from Oxford University Press that was very expensive. Now they're in the process of revamping it. And I was talking to them the other day. They now offer on a subscription basis access to a pack of resources that they created themselves that cover SQE1 and SQE2. The package is quite expensive because they're pricing it at £450 for a year's worth of access. But they say, I haven't had a look at it yet, but I mean, I trust them on this, but they say that it covers everything that you need, at least in a textual form, in terms of books, exercises, mock exams, practice questions, and so on. But that's an expensive package. In terms of lower priced options, we have a problem. The only ones that exist out there as a comprehensive offering are Revise SQE, that is a set of books that are quite small and not particularly expensive. They're about like £15 each or something for each of the different topics that I told you earlier. And they cover the totality of the exam, both parts of the exam, and they cover it fully with these small books. Are these books sufficient for you to prepare? No, they're sufficient for you to revise. But if you're studying this stuff for the first time, they're not deep enough for you to get the information that you need. If you
What
already
about,
have a law degree, you'd be fine. But if you're starting from scratch, you need something extra.
and what about the multiple choice questions? Like, how can candidates approach those? How can you like practice for the MCQs and get the hang of
Yeah.
the questions and answering them?
Yeah, this is a question that I often get from the people that I'm trying to help with this. Like, how can I get better at the multiple choice questions? You get better with the multiple choice questions in the same way that you get better at the gym. You go every day and you train. The only way that you can get better at the multiple choice questions is by doing them again and again and again and again. Now, some are text-based resources. So Revised SQE has got a couple of books that are, big books that are compilations of multiple choice questions. If you sign on with any of the prep schools, they will give you also compilations in text form, compilations of multiple choice questions. But in addition to this, there's quite a wide variety of tests that you can do online. The benefit of the online test is that you can have mock exams that approximate what is happening in the actual exam. You know why this is so difficult? Because I told you, you got all these questions. You got a minute and a half per question. So you got a minute and a half. Can you believe that? So you have to read like a 5, 6, 7 line scenario. And then you have to read 5 possible answers, each of which is like a long sentence or two. And you got a minute and a half. You probably don't have enough time to read it, never mind to make up your mind as to which one's the correct answer. So doing this in a computerized test, as you will when you're actually taking the exam, is the best way to prepare. So having the text resource is probably nice when you're sitting in bed and you want to do a little bit of revision, but you really need to get yourselves on top of some computerized questions to get used to the habit of doing them really quickly. All the prep schools have got extensive sets of multiple choice questions for you to train on. In addition, the Solicitors Regulation Authority, the regulator, is making available some free sets for people. They're not endless, but there are quite a few questions that you can train. On top of this, you can find free trials from a variety of providers, but you can also buy yourself access to people who create multiple choice questions for you to train on. I'm working with a colleague who's is using an AI tutor to create multiple choice questions and has got a nice platform that generates mock tests for you that, you pay like a small fee and then you get up there and you can try those. If you want to do nothing and just get them to come to you, you can subscribe to my newsletter when I send every day multiple choice, not every day, I've got other stuff to do. Every Monday. I send every Monday a fresh multiple choice question and then some reading material and stuff like that. But the only way to get on top of it is practice, practice, practice. Think of it like, you want to have your beach body and you want to be ready for the summers to, delight everybody on the beach. You just have to go to the gym and practice every day. It's the same deal.
That's some good motivational SQE talk. But the thing with the course providers, as you said, is that, or let me rephrase it this way, the best place you can actually start from, even if you're not going to go directly through a course provider, is to check the SRA's exam or samples, because
Yeah.
at least you would have an idea of how how the question would look like in an exam
Yes.
setting,
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
you figure out the level of difficulty that's expected from a multiple choice question, and
Yeah.
that's and it's very important, I guess, to, even if you practice a lot, it's very important to understand how you are coming to this outcome or answer. It's not just
Yes.
that hit or miss, and maybe you are getting the correct answer, but you're just getting it by chance and not by actually understanding the key concept.
As with every exam, understanding the style and the format and the expectation of the exam is as important as knowing the substantive content. You could have learned to drive the car because your grandfather put you in an old car he had in the village. And you learn to drive the car by going around the field and going around the houses and stuff like that. So you think you know how to drive. And it could be that you know how to drive, okay? You know how to start the car, you know how to change gear, you know how to stop, you know how to steer. If you go and take the test, are you going to pass? No, because when they when you do the driving test, they're not going to ask you, can you drive the car? They're going to ask you to do a set of preset, pre-required things that you might not want to do or might not be necessary. To park in a specific way, to stop in a specific way. This exam is exactly the same. It could be that you have good functioning knowledge of the law, but if you've never seen multiple choice questions again, if you've never seen multiple choice questions in this style, even though you know the law very well, you will not be able to address it. So as for every other exam that you've ever taken, if you're not familiar with the style and the expectations of the particular exam, you're not going to be prepared for it just on the basis of underlying knowledge.
Dr. Yanis, I have one more question in mind, and it's going back to actually how much solicitors are being paid and the career options and paths in front of you. I I'm going to assume that probably a number of our attendees here, or even the ones who are later going to watch this on YouTube, might want to qualify as solicitors in England and Wales, but do not want to actually work in England and Wales. And from your academic experience and your contact with different providers or candidates or people who took the SQE, uh, how helpful do you think it is to actually qualify as a solicitor but not work in England?
There is, for some reason, always a salary premium for people who have multiple qualifications. It is always attractive to say, I am qualified as a lawyer in the jurisdiction I'm working in, but I'm also qualified in New York. I'm also qualified in England. I'm also qualified in Paris. People are willing to pay more money for this, even though, and that's where it gets silly, even though you might never actually get to use that qualification. Because if you are familiar with American law, you could help people that have got an American law problem. And so long as, say, you're advising on a contract and you need to understand how contracts perform or contractual obligations are interpreted in American law, this is not a reserved activity. So you don't need the stamp of a lawyer to be able to advise somebody on a contract. However, if you tell the client, I'm also qualified in New York, they will automatically believe that you're an expert and they will be willing to pay you more money. So that's the reason why people seek the dual qualification. And that's why we have a variety of students from all over the world who both are trying to get an English law degree, even though they never aspire to work in England, but having an English law degree in addition to the local law degree makes them sound fancy, and people who seek the dual qualification because then the law firm can sell them to the client at a higher rate.
You know, it's interesting, like as an academic, how you actually not just deliver the material, but you also have reached a point where you know why students are here or why they are actually trying to get this qualification or to learn something.
Well, we have to understand this so that way we can support the students better in what they're trying to do. I mean, if you want an easy example, I'm working also for the University of London distance learning program. We have loads of people on that program that never intend to come to the UK. For example, we've got tons of Malaysian students on that program. And, you know, one might wonder, why does everybody who is studying for a law degree in Malaysia is also studying for an English law degree through the University of London? The answer is that they've discovered that then they can get a salary premium if they say that they've got 2 law degrees. And for them, it's a little bit of extra effort. But since they're doing it at the same time, it doesn't mean that, you know, it delays their qualification or anything like this. But there's something that we haven't mentioned that I want to raise for our audience that I think is super important. I told you at the very beginning of our presentation that there are 2 parts to the exam. So far, we've been talking about SQE1, that was the substantive bit. The second bit, the more lawyery things, what do you do with a client, what do you do with a firm, what do you do in a court? You're lucky because if you're foreign qualified, you don't have to sit through the second part of that exam. So for Lebanon specifically, if you have an admission certificate and if you worked post your qualification in Lebanon for 2 years, I mean, you can correct me on this, but that's what the SRA says. So you got your practicing certificate and you've got 2 years post-qualification experience in Lebanon, and then you've got 2 referees and you need to provide, of course, the qualifications, the professional qualification of your referees. But if you've got these three things, then the SRA will accept you as a foreign lawyer, and you don't have to take the second big part of the exam, which is huge, because the second part of the exam is quite tricky, and also it costs a great deal of money to sit the exam. So if you can obtain an exemption from that bit, you only have to worry about surviving the multiple choice questions. That is one of the reasons why I've got a lot of Indian and Pakistani students who are trying to qualify as solicitors, because they think it's going to give them like a career advantage if it is in their CV, and they actually manage to do it it's expensive, but they do it in a way that they can contain the cost, because they only have to do the first part of the exam and they're exempt from the second. So the same thing can work for Lebanese qualified lawyers as well.
Exactly, that's 100% right. And I guess some jurisdictions have what is called an agreed exemption by the SRA, which is just automatic. And other jurisdictions, you need to provide more documents
Yeah,
or provide more.
the list now, because they're working their way through these agreements, the list of agreed exemptions is very, very extensive. So
Exactly.
I think from anybody who might be in the audience here, even if you're from other countries within the Middle East, I think you're covered, so you're gonna be fine.
And the second part of the exam, which is SQE2, as you mentioned, is a bit tricky, and it's more the lawyering stuff, and it's more about the advocacy skills and
Mm.
client interviewing skills. It's mostly lawyer based, so I guess that's why the exemption is available for this part of the exam, and the regulator still wants to make sure that you have the functioning legal knowledge and substantive law knowledge. That's why you still have to undertake the SQE1 with the multiple choice and covering
Yes.
all legal material.
Yeah, because the regulator assumes that if you're already working as a lawyer and you got a couple of years experience, you know what it means to work as a lawyer. But you're not a lawyer in England. So they want to make sure that you know how the substantive law actually operates, so you can effectively advise your clients. And that's why getting an exemption from SQE2 is possible, but not from SQE1, apart from one category, which is the gentleman that put a question, because in the Q&A in the meeting, we've got a gentleman that put a question. They say that they're an English barrister. Well, terrific news, because if you're the barrister, you're the only category that gets exempt fully. So you can get exemptions from SQ1 if you are a barrister in England.
I have a question now that just came up to my mind. It's for also to like distinguish between two legal practitioners in England, between solicitors and barristers. Can barristers do what solicitors do, but the opposite is not true?
Well, barristers can do more things than solicitors in the courts. And barristers do not want to do the job of solicitors, because barristers are court advocates. The way that the system, this is very peculiar for anybody who's not from this jurisdiction, so it might be worth explaining in a moment or two. Here, if you are a solicitor, you are what everybody else in the world understands as a lawyer. So if you're a lawyer in Lebanon, you can go to court up until a certain level, depending on how old you are and what's your level of seniority, but you can access the courts. Most of your job is advising clients or working through the paperwork for the various legal issues. This is effectively what the solicitor does. The solicitor sees the client, takes instruction, deals with their issues in the substantive law, deals with their paperwork. If they have to go to court, they do have access to courts up until a certain level. So if that's what the solicitor does, and that's the lawyer job that corresponds to what everybody else in the world is doing, what's a barrister? A barrister is effectively a senior lawyer who's specialized in talking to the court. And it is only in very few circumstances, for very high complexity cases, that you will hire a barrister for advice and paperwork. You normally only hire a barrister to represent you in court. And the client does not hire the barrister. It's usually the solicitors that hire the barrister to help them when they have to go to one of the higher courts for the more complex issues. For these reasons, as we said at the beginning, qualification as a barrister, seeking for a foreign lawyer to become a barrister is not really a very good idea. And there are other reasons in terms of how they get paid and all that makes it very difficult. Our colleague in the question also was asking what happens with the training contract. There is no longer a training contract. Training contract was the period of work that you needed to do after you finished that legal practice course that I told you about. So then you would be able to qualify. This now has been scrapped with the SQE. The only thing that they want is what they call qualifying work experience, which would be experience in the legal domain before you pass the SQE, during or after, it doesn't matter. And if you're a foreign lawyer, you're exempt from this because you're already a lawyer and you've worked someplace else.
But you know, like some law firms are still actually, like the big law firms are still actually offering training contracts for this year, the following, or the year
Yeah,
after.
you're right. They do call it this. Effectively, what they do is that they offer somebody the opportunity to work for them and to do their qualifying work
And take.
experience, but they did not want to change their internal system and the way they label it because it works for them.
Okay.
Because the idea of a training contract is that you're basically getting incorporated into a law firm, you understand the culture, you get to choose which practice area you want to focus on, you get to work as a team with your lawyers. So the fact that externally the regulator understands this differently now, it doesn't mean that it's not a valuable period of time controlled by the law firm. That's why the law firms continue to label this as a training contract when in fact, in terms of qualification, it is now understood as qualifying work experience.
Dr. Yanis, before like we check if any attendees or any other attendees have any questions or remarks, I have like a small request. Remember when, because most of our attendees are maybe Lebanese lawyers or even the people who are going to watch this later on, or other junior lawyers in general.
Mm.
They all suffer. We all suffer from the amount of work and running through the courts. And I guess you know where I'm going with now. Can you tell us why you decided not to pursue a career as a legal practitioner and decided to go full-time academic? And there was this one specific story when you were training in Greece.
Well, what I did is that I didn't study in Greece because I'm Greek, right? Clearly, I studied in the UK, so I did all my undergraduate and my masters here in the UK, and then I went to Greece to do my training there in order to qualify. The problem is I didn't like it. So while I did my training, I really didn't have a good time. I mean, I enjoyed living in Athens. It was great, and the weather's much better than this stuff we got here in London. But I just did not enjoy the work. I definitely did not enjoy the pay. I did not enjoy the prospects. I did not enjoy the fact that I had to go to the army for a year if I had stayed there. I don't know, probably applies to most of you down there. Um, so I decided to come back to the UK to do a PhD. And because I left thinking that working as a lawyer would not be something that I want to do long term, I did not finish my qualification process in Greece. An additional reason would be that if I had gone ahead, because I was registered with a bar association in Athens and I was going through the process. The problem is if I had completed and I had gotten my license, then I would need to pay social security contributions and taxes in Greece, even though I was not a practicing lawyer. So it was not something that I could afford at the time. And since I thought I don't really want to come back and practice as a lawyer, I didn't take that step. So since I came back and I did the PhD, then I became an academic. Now, I'm still not qualified. I have not, even though I'm helping the poor tortured souls who are going through this, I have not myself gone through the SQE because, at the stage that I am, I don't seek to practice as a lawyer. So if I am to do it at some point, I'm just going to do it to participate in the experience, but I don't see myself as a practicing lawyer at any point.
As you said, like at this point of time, there's actually no need to practice as a lawyer after all the years of experience as an academic. Um, and the gentleman who asked the first question also like made a follow-up comment that the system has changed and the rules have changed.
Yeah,
Clients can.
I read this. They have progressively, they're sort of muddying the waters, and what the solicitors can do and the barristers can do is coming closer. And now there are more commonalities in the operation of the two sides of the profession than before. In addition, clients do have the capacity to instruct barristers directly in certain circumstances, but I thought that this is getting to a level of complexity that's not necessarily relevant for our audience. But certainly, if somebody is interested in becoming a barrister, this is also an option, but this is a process that I am less familiar with. So I would need to send you one of my colleagues for a kind of follow-up webinar that talks about the bar specifically.
If none of our attendees has any questions or remarks to follow up with, if you do, please do raise your hand. I can give you the opportunity to open your microphones and directly ask your questions. If not, I would like to thank Dr. Ioannis again for being with us. I would like to thank you all for your time, for taking the time and being with us here. It's nice to know that you're interested in qualifying as solicitors in England and Wales. And Dr. Ioannis, thank you for all the information you provided now and for all the help you're providing for potential candidates through the newsletter, the community, and all the YouTube videos. Good luck with that, and thank you all.
I think we scared our audience, and probably they're less inclined to do it now than they were before they watched this.
I guess it's at least it gave us some sense of clarity on how it's going to look like. At least you're more prepared of what's behind this, what's waiting
Yeah,
for
and,
you.
and I think the crucial question is, do you see this making a contribution to your lifelong earnings? If you're simply involved with local clients in the local market, perhaps this is not particularly relevant to you. If you're working for a foreign multinational, or you aspire to work for a foreign company, or you think you might service clients that have to do business with the UK, then it becomes a lot more important. So you really need to sort of try and project yourself. Who am I working for, or who am I working with in 5 or 10 years' time? And would qualification as a solicitor allow me to charge a premium for my services at that point? Because otherwise, it is a very significant investment in time and money to do it just for fun. So you need to have a particular financial benefit coming down the road to justify the process.
I guess it's a good way to look at it for the return on investment, given the amount of time you need to put in and the money you need to put in to qualify as a solicitor. So it's always good to understand the
Yeah,
ROI behind.
and you see the dynamic here is a little bit different from doing a master's degree, because you can do a master's degree because you're interested in the knowledge, but also you're interested in the experience and the skills that you're gonna get and the life experience of living abroad for a year or whatever. That's why we are happy to have master's students, and we are content that they're getting a valuable experience, even if they will not go work in the field that they did their master's. But that is study. Preparing for the SQE is not study. Preparing for the SQE is a painful process that has a singular objective. So nobody does the SQE to have, perhaps the only person who could do the SQE just to know what it's like from the inside would be me. But nobody else does it for the experience. You do it because you want the qualification. So that's the important thing to consider. What is the qualification going to bring you in your pocket in 5 and 10 years' time? And then that will help you decide what you want to do.
That's a great way to conclude this interview. And thank you so much again. It was a pleasure seeing you another time. Looking forward to seeing you
Thank
again.
you. Thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. It's been great doing this, and I'm looking forward to other people benefit from the recording and so on. Right. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.